Greetings, I'm Salvador Cordova, and welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. Today is going to be a special presentation as I'm going to be recounting the events of yesterday where the church I've been a part of, McLean Bible Church, for the last 38 years, had threatened me with arrest and jail time for attending their worship services. I was threatened with arrest and jail time if I ever returned to the properties. I'm going to detail kind of the details of what happened yesterday, which isn't really much to report on, but more importantly, the events leading up to this and surrounding it. But first, for those of you new to the video channel and those who don't know me, let me introduce myself. I'm a Christian who professes the evangelical and Reformed faith. I'm a molecular biophysics researcher by profession. I published in scientific journals and handbooks. Prior to that, I was an engineer and scientist in the aerospace and defense industry. One of my employers, MITRE, the Center for Advanced Aviation System Development, sent me off to pilot school, and hence the photographs of me in my much younger years when I was a pilot. Some of my work, I built flight simulators, very small scale flight simulators that could fit inside aircraft carriers, and some of them were at the Al Jaber Air Force Base in Kuwait. So that was a long journey from being an engineer to becoming a molecular biophysics researcher. I have 5 science degrees, including a Master of Science from Johns Hopkins University and an unaccredited degree, a Master of Science in biology. So my Master of Science from Johns Hopkins was in applied physics. However, probably one of the most meaningful activities in my life was serving the Lord according to 1 Timothy 5:4, the caring of parents. I had cared for my widowed and disabled mother for 18 years, and for the last 7, I gave her 24/7 round-the-clock care, while I also worked from home doing creation research for world-famous Cornell geneticist John C. Sanford. That led to me being voted as the #1 YouTube creationist. However, because I'm geographically far from the McLean campuses, I had been attending a local church that helped me care for my mom, but I also wanted to teach apologetics one Wednesday every other month at McLean, because that was, after all, my day job was doing apologetics research, but in my specialty. And so it seemed kind of logical that I would volunteer to do that for McLean Bible Church. So I requested a special dual membership at Occoquan Bible Church and McLean Bible Church. And the elders of McLean Bible Church granted this request on the provision, and this was conveyed to me by Elder Mark Gottlieb, that when my mother passed away, I would return to McLean Bible Church. My mom passed away April 30th, 2021, this year, which is only a few months ago, and I've returned to McLean Bible. My life story, or at least the earlier parts of it, are featured in the cover story of the April 28th edition of the prestigious scientific journal, Nature, which is a miracle that a creationist ended up on the world's premier scientific journal. I detail how I nearly lost my faith, but through the study of God's creation, with the tools of science, I was restored to belief. I provide a link in the video description there. As a consequence of that article being published in a prestigious scientific journal, I and members of my intelligent design group, such as Dr. Carolyn Crocker, were featured on national TV, radio, and even the motion picture Expelled, starring Ben Stein. I was filmed for the movie Expelled, but I didn't make the final cut, but Dr. Carolyn Crocker did. Unfortunately, today I have somber news to convey. As I said, I was threatened with arrest and jail by the church I've been a part of on and off for 38 years. So I'm making this video as I'm somewhat concerned for my personal safety, and it should be evident why, hopefully, by the end of this video. So in the event anything happens to me, because there are a lot of people that are angry with me for doing what I'm doing, I want this video to be a matter of public record. On September 30th, which was last week, last Thursday, I released an animated version of the following graph, and let me try to bring it up here. It conveys the attendance history of McLean Bible Church since its inception in 1961. Doc Dykeman there is pictured. He was the father of one of the 5 founding families of McLean Bible Church. So I estimate the attendance there was roughly 30 people. And the church grew till 1980 when Lon Solomon became the pastor, the senior pastor. And I was told by family members of Doc Dykeman that, personally, that there were about 200 people there in 1980. And 1983 was when I arrived, my very first service at McLean Bible Church with Lon Solomon speaking. So the green line represents that time from when I first saw him. And if you include a little bit of the blue dashed line there and the rest of the green, both dashed and solid, that represents the 37-year tenure. The attendance during this 37-year tenure of Pastor Lon Solomon, he's beloved in this town and by members and former members of McLean Bible for good reason. The red part of the graph represents the infiltration of the Southern Baptist Convention, which is an increasingly corrupt organization, into McLean Bible Church. And some of the people associated with that, such as Dale Sutherland, are pictured there. Unfortunately, I think Pastor Solomon, toward the end of his tenure, got involved in that too. And maybe in retrospect, that wasn't the best decision. But in any case, that led to the installation of David Platt, who's a Southern Baptist Convention pastor. This did not sit well with a lot of the congregation that wanted their independence from outside entities, such as the increasingly corrupt Southern Baptist Convention. During Platt's tenure of roughly 4 years, you could see the attendance drop. The solid line represents figures from the official congregational report. The dashed lines there, the purple dashed line represents an interpolation based on actual counts that I and others have made since that time. So the end of the dashed, the red solid line is May 2021, and in the coming months there was continued drop. Now, it may not be that severe a drop in terms of the brick and mortar. The problem is the official congregational reports are in the official congregational reports include online attendance. And traditionally, because we didn't have a lot of online capability, period, across the world, the brick and mortar reports aren't exactly the same thing as online plus brick and mortar. It's kind of mixing apples and oranges. I just need to point that out. People can dispute the validity of counting only brick and mortar, but I would argue that that is probably a more reliable measure of congregational involvement, participation, and engagement. Not to mention, it may probably, I'm going to postulate here, and I think with intuitive reason, that it's probably a better barometer of the money giving, the donations, what you can expect from donations. So that remains to be probably worked out to see if that is true. But the important point that I hope that can be seen here is there has been a tremendous drop in attendance under David Platt's tenure. So even though correlation does not necessarily imply causation, I think, at least from my vantage point, it's pretty clear what the causes of the drop are. It has been the change of management, and we'll go into that. But before going into that, let me talk about what my activities are that I think led to my being threatened with arrest and jail. I, as I said, by profession, I am not a reporter, but I managed to kind of do an imitation of a reporter and join the Fourth Estate, at least on Sundays. And that would mean I'd be visiting there, gathering information for the last several weeks in particular. And I've announced this on the internet. I would stand by a particular pillar in the lobby of the Tyson's campus and just try to meet people and try to encourage people that shared my sympathies. I would go around the congregation, and here's one of my notebooks. I'd be taking down information, and yeah, it was pretty obvious. You know, I'd have my pen in hand, and I'd be talking to people, and I'd be writing stuff down, and then I'd be giving out my business cards, etc., contact information. Now, I would not get in people's face. That's people that know me. That's just not my style. That's for other people. I could never be a door-to-door salesman or a telemarketer. That's just not my personality. But if people approached me and said hi and introduced themselves or whatever like that, I was very comfortable just continuing conversations. I would not get in people's faces. I also took my cell phone and took photographs of things. And you've seen some of those photographs here. Now, this obviously did not endear me to the leadership that I was doing this, because my reporting activities kind of did some reputational damage to them. But I'd like to say, really, it's not my reporting. I'm only the messenger. The reputational damage was done by their behavior, by their decision making, by the things they said. I merely reported on it. So that's kind of my way of absolving myself from the cause of reputational damage. The fundamental cause is them, not me. I merely was there to report as accurately as I could the events. So I'd be going there, and I'd go inside the sanctuary. Hang on, I lost my pen. And there'd be various sections of the sanctuary. And this is like a sample of what I was doing just before I got what they call trespassed, which means, you know, forbidden from coming back. I would go and write down the sections. I mean, it's pretty obvious what I was doing. I'm kind of standing in various places. I go, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In each of the sections, I would tally, and I'd add them up, and I'd get numbers. And then just to reassure people that I knew, and I'd circulate this privately. I don't like just photographing people, because I want to respect their privacy, especially in God's house. Okay, so if they're in their sanctuary and they're worshiping, I'm not trying to broadcast this. I want them to feel free to be going to the sanctuary. So the photographs I'm going to show are blocked. I put rectangles over the people, so it'll look a little funny for two reasons. One, to protect their privacy, but it's also a method that I could also photographically analyze the counts. So in addition to being in the sanctuary, when there's small numbers, it's relatively easy to count. When you have about 500, it gets hard to actually just kind of be there in the sanctuary counting. It's better to do a photograph and then do the counting at your leisure, and you make a more accurate count as a result. So let me cue this up. Let me share a picture of Arlington. Now, Arlington campus, we have 5 campuses. Tyson's is the big one. Then the second most influential is Montgomery County. Then the remaining 3, you could question which is bigger. There's Prince William County, Arlington, Arlington, Prince William, Arlington, and then Loudoun. Now, Arlington is in the middle of construction. I believe it's in the ballpark of a $2 million project. So the congregation at Arlington is meeting at 5 p.m. at the Tysons campus. I'm going to show a picture of the Tysons campus. My most recent count of the Arlington at Tysons was on September 26th at the 5 p.m. service. I took the count at about 550. So definitely, if you had stragglers wandering in, you're getting a pretty robust full count. I'm going to show a picture of that. Let me grab it. And I think it will be shocking to see how few people there are. There you go. So there you see kind of all the color coding, because again, I'm the one, I took this picture and then I added those colored rectangles to help me count, but also to protect their privacy. And let me I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There's a zoomed in picture. And so why do I use these colored rectangles? Each set of colored rectangles represents 10 people. So I can count 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And there's some other parts that aren't seen in here. But the bottom line is I had photographic evidence plus I was there. So I had to take several photographs. What I would do in practice is to actually colorize and count each of the sections according to see how each of the groupings of chairs are kind of like islands, and it makes it easier to count also. And I would just divide that. So this is just kind of a representation of how I do this. This isn't the exact photographic plates that I would use. And the count I got for Arlington at Tysons, September 26th, 5:50 p.m. at the 5 p.m. service was 120. By the way, you could probably see here, there's Pastor Eric Saunders. So let me move to the next picture. Earlier that morning at the 11 a.m. service at 11:30, after the offering was taken and after the children left the sanctuary for Children's Sunday School, what we call Kids Quest, I was at the Prince William campus, and I heard that because I'm a known personality on the internet and known to the leadership at church and many congregational members, when I walked in, I got some pretty hostile looks. I found out later they are very alarmed to see me there, little old me. And this is a picture of the Prince William campus. The 11 a.m. service, and this is at 11:32 a.m., had only a mere 90. So you have 5 campuses that constitute McLean Bible Church. 5 campuses. One of them had 120 total, because they only had one service. That was the Arlington on the 26th of September. The Prince William campus, their 9 a.m. service had 90. Ironically, their 11 a.m. service had 90. Ironically, their 9 a.m. service had 176. So 266 on Sunday morning, Prince William, 120 total Arlington on Sunday, September 26th. I got reports from Montgomery County that there were about, say, 500 total for both services. And then Tysons, we didn't have as good the counters there, but I did review some photographic evidence, and I can say it was about 1,500. Now, the only one that was unreported that day was Loudoun. So I went to Loudoun yesterday, and I was all equipped with my notebook, and I was all set to count. I was so excited. some of you know that I was a skilled card count. I got kicked out of casinos for counting cards. I said, wouldn't it be ironic if I got kicked out of church for counting people? And I was all excited. I'm going to do this count. Okay, so you know that I'm a number. You could probably sense I'm a numbers guy. Okay, so one of my undergraduate degrees is in mathematics with a minor in physics. So, okay, just for the record, 3 undergrad degrees. First is in computer science. The second, electrical engineering, minor in music. Third, mathematics, minor in physics. My graduate degree, master's applied physics and master's in biology. But I think at heart, I'm kind of really a numbers nerd. And so I was there at service just saying, Lord, help me do this count real well. And, you know, I'm here to serve you. I need to tell the truth. I need to report what's going on. And in the middle of that service, really more like 9:10, 9:15, because this is the 9 a.m. service, a gentleman came up very politely, God bless him, and said, sir, I'd like to speak to you. Can we speak to you? And I said, yes, sir. And we went outside and he said, this way. And I said, sir, I'd prefer to be, if we can have this conversation in a public space, I'd be willing to do that, because there's always a threat you could be backroomed where you're isolated and no one can see you, and they'll bring the big guys to kind of intimidate you. And he said, no, we're gonna this will be public space. He brought me to the lobby or foyer, and if McLean wants to release videos or kind of the videotapes of the interchange, if you saw it, it was a very cordial, diplomatic interchange. But anyway, he said, you're trespassed, you're banned from this property. And I knew what that meant. There was they brought me before a sheriff who was also very cordial. They're respectful to the utmost. Sheriff Beach. And this is in Loudoun County, but the sheriff is often there also to, help McLean security. And so I told the gentleman, I said, this is nothing, I have nothing personal against you gentlemen. I really want to express my appreciation for you protecting the congregation. I know that this was a decision by management. And I explained to them I was there counting, and he said, well, I don't know anything about that. I said, well, I'm just telling you person to person why I'm here. There's been a very substantial drop in congregation numbers, attendance numbers. I am doing this for congregational meetings. At this point, one had just recently taken place, but this was for the December congregational meeting. And I'm doing an independent audit of what's going on. And so I had a little more conversation. I said, sir, can I shake your hand? I really was very sincere. And you'll see why a little bit also, and that is because of my friendship with one of the former security members of McLean Bible, Dr. Sandy Pigeon, retired U.S. Navy SEAL. Anyway, the sheriff, as I was walking out, I told everyone I'll comply, no problem with me. I shook the sheriff's hand, and he said, yeah, I'd like to give you some information. So we walked outside. We had like a 15-minute conversation. And he said, well, I'd like to tell you, I'd really like for you not to get in any trouble. If you come back on the property, McLean is going to contact law enforcement, and we're going to have to arrest you or do something. You might end up in jail. I really don't want you to go to jail. So I'm just kind of telling you that if you can at all, try to resolve this issue with the McLean leadership. And I expressed my sincere thanks for his concern for my welfare. And he informed me, he said, it might not serve your cause, your mission to get trespassed and put in jail. He said, try to find other means that will probably be more productive. And that was a very calm conversation, and I thanked him, and that was the end of the matter. So the question is, why was I trespassed? And you're beginning to get a few hints that my reporting activities and trying to do an accurate inventory of what's really going on is not sitting well with the McLean leadership. Now they have said, Sal, why don't you write us? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to say this. If I wrote you and you wrote me back, it's just between you and me. This issue needs to be conveyed to the entire congregation, and it's not being conveyed. What is happening is they're putting their version of events on the website. They're not allowing congregational members like myself to report things that we can clearly see that we find problematic. So it's not an issue of me writing to them and they just leave it that. It's like, okay, we'll try to placate you. This is a matter that should be public knowledge, and it says in the New Testament, elders can be rebuked, and there are times when they can be and should be rebuked publicly. The suppression of information and transparency is very concerning to me, not to mention some of the things that have come out of some of the elders' mouths, like, for example, pastor and member of the elder board, Mike Kelsey, who said, it's difficult for me not to torch all white people, especially white evangelicals and Christians. And I'm like, that's not exactly the coolest thing to say if most of your congregation's white and he's black. That's just, okay. Don't expect that the white members of the congregation will feel exactly welcome with that sort of attitude, okay? I mean, there's some common sense there, Pastor Kelsey. And, again, no ill will intended. I thank your parents for meeting me some Sundays ago and telling me that they're praying for me. And my side of the issue is praying for you, Pastor Kelsey. But I hope it's evident that this is stirring a climate that is not healthy for growing the numbers of your congregation. So that's the accurate count. So what are my total tallies? I threw out a lot of numbers here. Most of it was off the top of my head, but I estimate it could be as low as 3,200 brick and mortar. And I said there will be an ongoing discrepancy because McLean's official reports use wrap into their numbers the online attendance, which I'm skeptical of as being a very good barometer of congregational engagement, which should translate into money, but that is the problem here. And I'm going to cover that based not on even stuff that I said. Their official congregational reports were raising red flags among the congregation, and I'll show you scans of these reports. This is public knowledge, and it raised my curiosity, and that's why I got involved in this. People said, why are you getting involved in this, Sal? I said, well, I think it's my calling. Elder Gottlieb said, when your mother passes, you've got to go back to McLean. And I felt that as a sacred calling from God to come back. That God had a special mission for me. Sorry, I'm like the teenage girl in the family. I just like a bag of emotions. My sister's the exact opposite. She's like got ice water in her veins. I felt this is a sacred calling. I could shirk my duty to tell the truth, and I couldn't live with myself. So let me proceed here before I totally embarrass myself with the rest of the presentation. Let me bring up the video. So this is just the attendance figures. There's nothing there that this is the attendance figures. There's nothing there with the financials, and I'm going to cover that. Just give me a moment to kind of reset my gyros here, and I'll be set. So look here at the high point of the graph here. Let's see if I can get my laser pointer going. high point of the graph is 2014. And then the present point is the last official one that I have access to is May. Now, there may be later things that were released in the most recent congregational report, September 29th, September 30th. But suffice to say, what I'm about to show you is our official numbers. So this is 2014 and this is 2021. May 2014 here, May 2021 here. So let me show, this is the average attendance. Now let me show the financials for the corresponding period. You'll note something interesting. From 2014 to 2021, it's actually an increase. It's actually an increase. And that caught my attention. Now, we'd like to be able to, I wanted to report this at the congregational meeting, that I'm concerned about these numbers, and I'm going to go into more detail. But I prepared for that congregational meeting this graph. Now you can see it's shaped a little differently. I was going to bring this to the congregational meeting. Now you can see in here I use straight lines, and I'll explain that. That's because after I made that graph, one of the former pastors sent me more data, and I was able to make the straight lines more accurate. But it's still the same general thing. I was going to bring that to the congregational meeting that was September 29th, September 30th. And what had happened, according to the leadership, was there was a coronavirus outbreak, and therefore they didn't have enough armed security to take care of the congregation. And let me give a video. Let me play a video, if I may, of how the congregational meeting, June 30th, how it played out. Let me see if I could find it. Here it is. Let me get it going. I'm going to play it for you. I shouldn't laugh. Sometimes I do, because sometimes when a situation's just like so outrageous, you just can't help but laugh. Okay, so this is what this is what you might expect from the opening of the McLean Bible Church congregational meeting. So let me try to get this going.
That brings honor to Lord. Thank you. If any person disrupts or shouts out at any point during the meeting, whoever is speaking on stage at that point will immediately back away from the microphone, while our security team immediately comes to escort that person out of the meeting. If you are sitting near the person who has disrupted or shouted out during the meeting, please feel free to move away from that area appropriately and expediently. This will help both you and our security team or our FRT team. If anyone who disrupts or shouts out during the meeting or refuses to leave with our first response team, then security and possibly law enforcement will be asked to intervene. If anyone here is representing any sort of media, official or unofficial, including online platforms, bloggers, social media channels, etc., we would ask that you identify yourself. This is a private meeting of the McLean Bible Church family and is not open to media, so we kindly ask that you would leave the meeting at this point. Please know that we care and we love each and every single one of you. This is for your cooperation, and we pray for a peaceful and productive gathering that brings honor to Lord. Thank you.
Okay. So that was June 30th. And then now let me share a picture of the, let me see if I get this right. I have to get the right PowerPoint. I think this is it. Let me just confirm this if you give me a moment here. Okay. So I'll show you, I showed you the video of June 30th. This is the July 18th. This is in the video description. By the way, where these videos are sourced are in the video description. This is the July 18th congregational meeting. There are pictured 3 armed security there, with one of them being Fairfax County Police with all his gear. Not pictured are 2 additional armed security that are escorting Jim Powers, my dear friend, out of the congregational meeting, which was oddly held in the middle of a worship service, which is, I think, very disrespectful to a worship service of the Lord, that you're trying to conduct business, and I would characterize it as kind of shady business. And then, there was eventually me being escorted out of the sanctuary this past Sunday. So, okay, this is, we love you, from the elders to the congregation, McLean Bible Church. And I'll just continue here. I'm sorry, I just can't help it, adding a little, some of my twisted humor to all this. So this goes back to this graph that I was going to bring with me, and you saw the big board that I was carrying. I was going to bring that. If they granted me the opportunity to have the floor, I would have shared this and raised my concerns. Well, they had the coronavirus outbreak, and then they said, well, we don't have enough security to enforce the meeting. They don't have enough security to orchestrate the meeting the way that they want, in other words, because they want to make sure the congregation doesn't speak out of turn, and they make a point of not allowing, at least the last several ones, limiting or not even allowing any expression of dissent. According to the New Testament, we're supposed to be able to, we're encouraged to say things publicly, but there's information not being conveyed to the rest of the congregation. And so they were afraid that there would be an outburst, and I was going to just silently, at least if they didn't give me the floor, I'd be carrying this big sign around that talked about congregational attendance. And granted, this is a very provocative graph. It's meant to be. It's meant to convey what the problem of McLean Bible Church is. The problem of McLean, as far as congregational participation and numbers, is not the people that are like myself who are calling this out. It is clearly, at least in my opinion, the leadership, the present leadership, is responsible for this carnage of our church. The Save McLean informal initiative, or whatever you call it, is not the cause of the carnage that's happening in the church. It is a symptom. It is a symptom of people seeing what's going on, observing it, being repulsed, many of them just leaving the church because they've had enough. And these are members that have built the church during that glorious era when it was rising under the tenure of Lon Solomon. It's ultimately God that did this, that caused the growth. Lon Solomon helped, but there were like 3,000 volunteers at one time. So that means 25% of the congregation at one time. I mean, again, these are figures that I've seen elsewhere. That's a huge level of participation. We were building each other up. This has been destroyed by the current leadership, not to mention they've had other huge missteps. So I get the sense that they're trying to pin this disaster on us that are happen to be just pointing it out. But we're not the cause. We're the symptom. We're the consequence of what many of us perceive is total mismanagement of a church that was thriving and healthy. Maybe I could summarize it this way. If you have a merchant that's selling something and a customer buying something, and the customer wants something green, and the merchant gives him something red after, when the customer agreed on a transaction, it's customer's not going to be happy. So whatever the current leadership was giving, they probably gave the impression that, it's going to be a continuation of what it was. And sadly, the congregation voted the new leadership in, and they got something else. And then when they complained, the leadership said, well, it's your problem. You don't like this, the way we're doing business. Of course, people would naturally leave. So I'm trying to minimize kind of the moralizing of who's right in the sight of God. Okay, on a purely business level, this doesn't work. When you deliver something that the customer, or in this case, the congregation, wasn't wanting or expecting, or invested time and money trying to build something that they were expecting to see happen, and then you dash their hopes. I mean, this is like kind of management common sense. So I was going to bring this out. I was going to point this out. The congregational meeting, it ended up being online. And lo and behold, the chairman of the board of elders, Larry Cooper, said at that congregational meeting, and there are recordings of it, he said, we're in great shape financially. And okay, so you could see where this is going. And he also said, I'm excited for where we are and where we're headed. Okay, so let me share my screen again. So Larry Cooper, just this past September 30th, Thursday, said, I'm excited for where we are. So where we are is somewhere, I guess, around here or around here. I'm excited for where we are and where we're headed. I'm excited for where we are and where we're headed. And he said, we're in great shape financially. And that, of course, raised my curiosity. So going to the congregational numbers here, as I pointed out, there's actually been an increase in the reported weekly giving. You've had an increase in the reported weekly giving, and we've lost anywhere from 45 to almost 80% of the congregation, depending on how you do the bean counting. I've argued that this is probably closer to an 80% loss, because when I tallied all the numbers in the sanctuaries, I estimate 3,200. Now, I did want to write the elders and say, can we commission an official counting team? We need to know the vital signs of our church. We need to know the vital signs of our church. I may not be here to give cures. I'm here to just maybe take vital signs, maybe give a little diagnosis. It's beyond my skill set to tell you how to run an organization this large. I have a hard enough time running my own life. Okay, so this is not about trying to moralize and say necessarily you should do this. This is what you should do. No. Going there and doing a count was what little I could do to contribute. I can measure the vital signs. Now, I will give some diagnoses, and I just gave one with the merchant customer thing. Okay, that for what little it was worth. But even reporting on the vital signs of the church, I was trying to take a measurement this past Sunday, and I was threatened with arrest and jail if I continued. Now, granted, that probably felt to leadership I was being a nuisance by collecting all this information, and they took exception to that, and they knew I was going to report it. So On the other hand, by issuing me a trespass order, that tells me this is a real sensitive spot. This is something that they don't want you to know. And they're going to go to some measures to do everything they can to kind of brush it aside or minimize it. But so let me now continue here, and I'm going to just reemphasize the point. I talked to a forensic accountant, and after I got trespassed, and I said, this is what's going on. I managed to go into another church where I'm very welcomed. It was nice to feel welcomed there. There was a forensic accountant, an accountant there for a big firm. And I explained the situation, and she gave me some forensic information about she did not feel comfortable. And so let me go forward a little more. So this is the same graph basically without all the photographs of people. And I will expand. I'll cut out this part here, and I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit, the time frame. And just to add some pictures here, this communicates that we had kind of a lot more people. And yes, this was a picture taken on Labor Day, 4 minutes before service starts. Now, it ended up, the sanctuary ended up filling up. But the thing is that in prior years, even by 4 minutes before the service starts, the sanctuary would be packed out because people are fighting to make sure they get a seat. That was the enthusiasm level. But what ends up happening these days is people are like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a seat. And I got to tell you something funny. They used to have, it gets so packed there that when the services emptied out, they would have police officers helping to direct traffic. It'd take 30 minutes. And, you know, I have a twisted sense of humor. It was actually, I loved going to McLean Tyson's in this condition because there was no traffic. There were plenty of parking, no lines, and lots of spacious seating. I mean, it was just great because I'm a little bit claustrophobic. So kind of in an odd way, it was kind of nice coming to church because everything felt so wide open and spacious. But that's really not good for the congregational numbers. Anyway, so let me continue with this graph. And again, these are, you could see the solid line here is the official report. And even then, you would expect that the giving would go down. Instead, it's gone up. The reported giving. And if we take, you know, my counts down here, it's like this something doesn't add up. And the accountant instantly saw this. And so, yeah, this is a little animation of that. So am I making any sort of accusations? I'm just merely saying this makes me feel uncomfortable. This makes me feel very uncomfortable. There have been many of us in the congregation that wanted more transparency. We want to see, you know, they say, quote unquote, any member can examine the books. And some of us feel it's like, well, we examine parts of the books. You know, we'd like to see the books you're not showing us. From a forensic accounting standpoint, it'd be reassuring that, let's say hypothetically, we could have an independent forensic auditor to not just examine the general ledger of all transactions, but also how about going to the banks and getting bank statements where we can do vouching and tracing. We want to know where the money sources are. How are we able to manage this situation here? I mean, how did a, you know, kind of a demoralized congregation start wanting to give more? I mean, this picture, even though it eventually, this picture here, taken on Labor Day, is indicating a congregation not particularly worried about finding a seat. They're not eager to be there on time because they're just so desperate to be there that they'll be fighting for seats like they had been. I should also point out, it's not just that the sanctuaries are emptying out. There were more services. There used to be 5 services at Tyson's Corner. Now there are 3. And even those, no, there are 5 services. Now they're just 2 services. And the 9 a.m. and the 11 a.m. And even those are thinning out now. And I will report more on this, but there have been some kind of shenanigans that they were doing. I have pictures of signs saying overflow seating, and I was laughing. I said, "Are you guys delusional? There's no overflow." And what they did is they closed down the Spanish service and told the pastor there, and this was on the 19th of September, they shut it down. And I walked over there, what they call the Smith Center, which is also a nice auditorium, and someone ran up to me. He said, "Salvador, I saw your videos." And I was a little shocked, and he explained to me, he said, "Yeah, the center shut down because they said we need it, the management said we need it for overflow." And I was just like, "What's that about?" And they said, "We're redirecting all the Spanish congregation into the main sanctuary to fill it out." Not to fill it out. We're redirecting them there because they need to put the overflow back into to the Spanish sanctuary. I'm just like, that makes no sense. Why don't you just leave everyone where they are if they overflow into the Spanish one? You won't have, that'll work better, logistically speaking. And you're forcing all these people that came to hear their sermon and their worship service in Spanish to go to the main sanctuary, which is going to be in English, and you don't have a translator. And I said, this looks like you're trying to, this looks like kind of a public relations thing where you're trying not to make it so obvious you're losing numbers. And you're pulling stunts like putting signs like overflow. And so some of those who've been a part of McLean for a long time were just like, they're kind of rolling their eyes because they know what the sanctuary should look like when it's full. And so then again, I'm sorry to repeat myself. What is this all about? I would hope we would get explanations for this. And I'm worried that now that I'm reporting it, people have known it. There have been whispers. There have been hints of it occasionally coming out and leaking out. I'm not the first to notice this. But I wanted to get better vital signs and say, I wanted to see for myself, is the situation as bad for the attendance, one, and then also kind of raise the alarm, where are we getting this money? It's saying average weekly giving. Are we having some donors that are just sending oodles of money to a congregation that's dying? Okay, I can understand giving money to a cause where you're enlarging the church, but you're going to send tons of money to a congregation that's dying. How does that make sense? What's the inspiration for that? Yeah, okay, so you want to, maybe there's some donor who wants to throw away his money for a mismanaged church. And now McLean Bible is saying we want to plant churches. They're bragging of anywhere between, say, 37 to 50 planted churches. I said, do you want to make clones of McLean Bible Church right now in its current state and plant more churches in the image of McLean? I'm just like, guys, you need to set your own house right first. And I'd like to know who this donor is that wants to send tons of money to a dying church, dying mismanaged church. You could send it to my channel, just in case you're listening to this. I'd be very appreciative. And we'll cover about my revenues from this channel. Okay, since I brought the topic up, I made $10. Someone gave me a $10 donation for reporting on McLean. Okay, so just so you know, I'm not doing this for the money. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back here to the presentation. So this is an embarrassing fact. I think that I have been trespassed and banned because I'm reporting on this and a lot of things happening at McLean. They're feeling it. They're not liking the public image that it's telling the truth is conveying. So I got, I said that I had been trespassed at Loudon yesterday. That was about 9:10, 9:15. I had a nice conversation with the security and the sheriff. So say I got out about 9:30. I got home 10:45 a.m. and I find a email with a timestamp of 10:13 a.m. It says here, October 3rd, 2021. Oh, well, there's my address. It's public knowledge anyway. It's being circulated around McLean. What do I have to lose at this point? Dear sir, based on your observed behavior at McLean Bible Church on multiple occasions, you are hereby notified that you are forbidden to go upon all properties where McLean Bible Church holds meetings, to include the following addresses: Tysons, Arlington, Montgomery County, Loudoun County, Prince William County. This letter is to officially notify you that you shall not go upon any of the listed properties. Failure to comply with this request will result in the criminal charge of trespassing and brought against you, which is in violation of 18.2-119, the Code of Virginia. A copy of this letter has been sent to the police agencies which are responsible for the above locations. So there it is. I've been served. Elder Mark Gottlieb told me, Salvador, when you return, when your mother passes, you have to return to McLean. I have returned. I have done the duty I feel God has called me. Now, a beautiful story about Mark Gottlieb. After we had the interview, a few months later, he was in a biking accident and he was paralyzed. His neck was broken. He's paralyzed from the neck down. I was devastated. And I'd actually given up praying for his healing because it didn't seem like there was any progress. But by the congregational meeting, by the time of the congregational meeting, when I was getting involved, he was there. He was walking. He drove himself. He drove himself to that meeting. And a lot of us knew that this was a miracle of God and medical technology. But still, this is a provision of God. That he was a man paralyzed from the neck down and recovered. We were all praying for him. He resigned from the elder board of McLean. He didn't like where it was going. They wanted to parade him around at the June congregational meeting as if, of God doing great things. And God did do great things in Elder Gottlieb's life. But he didn't want to be a part of that charade because it was kind of a kangaroo congregational meeting. And he didn't want to be a part of it. He wasn't going to be used as a prop to affirm the leadership. And I commend him for that. So the elder that said to me, Salvador, when your mother passes away, you have to come back to McLean, was there. I took that as a indication from God. This is where I need to be. My duty is to report. So I have returned, but then I got kicked out. But I feel I've done my duty. I'm still in the fight, as you could see, but now I'm no longer I've been taken out of the front lines. So to all those, especially on the Tysons campus that knows me, you know the story, you know why I won't be there. This will raise some interesting legal questions for the next congregational vote whether I'll be allowed to vote. And really, this could be a real mess. But in any case, let me move forward a little bit. So I believe the reason I got trespassed was because of my reporting activities. And yeah, it did feel like it was a battlefield out there. I have kind of only a week ago, I was just kind of kidding. I have to come out in my battle uniform, you know, so there it is in my battle uniform. And I was only half kidding. I didn't realize it'd be a battlefield out there. But let me share something. Their picture there is Dr. Sandy Pigeon and myself on my YouTube channel. Dr. Sandy Pigeon and his wife came to my mother's funeral May 14th. Now, the reason this is significant, Dr. Pigeon, Lieutenant Commander Pigeon, retired U.S. Navy SEAL, was a leader in the first responder security team of McLean Bible Church. First responder security team of McLean Bible Church. His wife was fed up with what was coming from the pulpit in terms of the promotion of Black Lives Matter, indirectly. Not necessarily by that name, but a lot of people submitted the resignations because of the continued promotion of that. And Sandy eventually left himself. Now, during that time, he provided security for the President of the United States, Donald Trump, when Donald Trump visited McLean Bible. So why am I telling you that? If I were a threat physically to McLean Bible Church, he would be morally bound to be calling them up and saying, you got to get Sal out of there, trespass him now. He did not do that. In fact, this is a picture of us July 16th, the Friday before the infamous July 18th congregational vote. And we were just on my YouTube channel talking. So it's a matter of public record. He and I know each other. He's a trusted member of the McLean, former member of the McLean First Responder Security Team. My understanding is he was a leader of some of the teams there for the services. So I'm pointing that out is if McLean leadership is saying that I'm being forbidden to be on the property, I have a good case that it had nothing to do with me being a threat to the congregation. They did ask me, by the way, when I got taken out loud in there, the security asked me, do I have any weapons? And I said, no, sir, I don't have any. And I'm here to count and to do an independent audit. So my activity wasn't a threat to the congregation. I wasn't harassing anybody. It's just people that know me. I would never be a door-to-door salesman, used car salesman, or any of that. It's just not my personality. Okay? I'm a researcher. Okay, so why would they trespass me? I think they felt that my reporting on what's going on is hurting their reputation. But I want to say, guys, my reporting isn't the cause. It's what you did that's ultimately hurting your reputation. And I'll give examples of a story I broke and some of the photographs I've taken that probably don't sit well with them. Let's see if I can get this up. Hang on. All right. So I got a hold of photographs of Mike Kelsey, senior pastor of preaching and culture at McLean Bible Church, there with the Black Lives Matter sign with, I believe, his son, and beside the son is his father. And even though it says Black Lives to God, I told his dad, I said, that's an abomination, sir. Trying to lend the Lord's name and give an evil movement credibility. That's just my feelings, okay? And I broke the story where Mike Kelsey's, I had on video where he's saying, it's difficult for me not to torch all white people, particularly white evangelicals and Christians. And you know, if you have a white congregation, that's not kind of that attitude. Not, I mean, most people didn't even hear that, but I felt it represented the attitude that was coming from the pulpit. It made people that were white in the congregation not particularly welcome. And okay, so a lot of people left over that. And then, you know, I take photographs like this one with senior pastor Wade Burnett, who doesn't hardly preach at all. He's some sort of litigator that McLean hired to be pastor. And many of us don't really know what he does, but there's Wade Burnett there giving a warm welcome to a known Black Lives Matter activist right there in the McLean lobby. And I believe this was either the 19th or the 26th of September when I took this photo. So, you know, this does not, the optics of this do not look good. And, you know, I've been showing this. McLean leadership can't be happy that I'm doing stuff like this. So they, I think, you know, they're well within their purview that if management feels that you are writing negative reviews of their product, they don't want you in their store, okay? So this is like entering a restaurant and you keep writing negative reviews. They're going to say, sir, you know, please leave. They're well within their legal purview to do that. Okay, so if I'm a food critic and I walk into the store and I just keep giving negative reviews, maybe management can say, hey, you're not welcome here anymore. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. First off, they are kind of violating the spirit of their own constitution. So even though in the eyes of the secular courts, they're able to do this, they're not really quite following the spirit of their own contractual obligations to the congregation as outlined in the Constitution. And so what am I going to do? I really don't know. I think I'll continue to try to tell the truth. There are other people and record their stories. I recorded a lot of mine today, but it would be a blessing to hear the stories of other people. I mean, blessing, seriously. I've encouraged them not to just go on a whining rant as sort of what I've done today. I want them to tell about their love of Jesus, their love of God, their love of God's people during that beautiful time when our church was thriving and functional. And record that. I say, if you talk about your love of God, your love of the Lord, the love of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, you can't go wrong. And I look forward to making more videos to tell the story of kind of the Camelot days of McLean Bible Church. Because those people, even though the church now, McLean Bible, is kind of disintegrated in my opinion, even if they restore numbers, there's been reputational damage and there are issues of trust. The people that were part of the Camelot days of McLean are now filling the congregations all around the area. After the coronavirus lockdowns were lifted, these congregations were breaking records for their attendance while McLean's was going down. And it's because of those who left McLean, they brought their good lives and their gifts and talents of the Lord into those congregations. So the church beautifully scattered good seeds all across the area. And so I want to report on that. And I want to thank all the churches that have opened their arms to me as McLean has kicked me out. I want to thank you for the warm welcome that I've received, that you're receiving me with open arms, that there are probably 10 churches, at least in the area, that say, Sal, you can come to our congregation. I want to thank you. So for now, technically, I don't know where I stand. I don't know if I'm still on the member rolls. I know I cannot I'd be thrown in jail if I attempted to celebrate the Lord's Supper on the church I've been a part of, on and off, for 38 years. I'd be thrown in jail for that. Not because of outsiders, but because of the leadership at McLean Bible. But I want to thank everyone who's been supportive during this difficult time, and the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Take care, and God bless you.